I'm just sorting out a few more bits and bobs for growing in greenhouse over winter, or just storing to give them an earlier start in spring, like these strawberries. These are what we took off as main plant. You can see where we cut it away from the original plant, and what we do is we just pop them into pots and just leave them. And as these plants are growing, they develop their own root systems, so they root themselves into these pots, and that's when we detach it. And I did get a comment about that yesterday. So yeah, if you've got them growing in pots and they started rooting, you can then cut that off, take that away, and that's your brand new plant for next year. And because they're very young plants, I'll keep them in greenhouse. But it's not because they're not frost hardy. Strawberry plants can survive all the way through winter, no problem. But when they're young plants like these, I just like to give them that little bit of protection. That's so they get an early start next year. They'll put down more roots because they're going to grow that little bit quicker being inside a greenhouse. And then come spring, we're going to have stronger plants that hopefully will start producing fruit. They don't always give you fruit on the first year, but I've noticed over the last couple of years we've had quite a lot that have. So that's another addition to this winter greenhouse. We've got quite a few as well. So that's a very good start for next year. And I've also got these. I've had these outside, growing them on. They're Savoy cabbages, and they've got to be a really good size now, and they've got true leaves. And I was going to put them outside in the oak tunnels, but when they're such young plants, they're really susceptible to damage by slugs and snails, and small plants like this take no going through. So I'm thinking about maybe doing some of these in greenhouse as well, but I'll grow them in containers, not in ground. And that was also another comment made by one of the followers of this channel. Exactly what can you grow in a greenhouse in winter? So I'll go over a few things that I'm going to be doing. Obviously, you've seen we've got that long container of carrots, and they'll grow perfectly fine in your containers, in your greenhouse, all the way through winter. Along with other root vegetables as well, like turnips and beetroot. And we've got beetroot going already. I don't really bother too much with turnips, but I might try some swede. So those type of root vegetables are perfectly alright to put in your greenhouse and carry on growing through winter. And if it does drop really cold, like -3 and 4, all you need to do is just put a little bubble wrap over the tops of those plants to protect them from frost. Whereas if it was outside, there's not really much you can do, especially around here, because anything you cover up with fleece, sun gets blown away because we get quite bad winds at times. So that's why it's a bit of a nuisance to be growing things outside that you need to cover up with fleece all the time. So we'll try some Savoy cabbages. And apart from Savoy cabbages, you can grow other brassicas over winter as well, which we did last year. We grew red cabbages and they came out perfect, not a problem. We harvested loads, we've chopped and we've blanched them, and we've froze those for later use. And we had those just growing in a little greenhouse all the way through winter, and we never so much as put a bit of fleece over the top. I just left them and they took care of themselves because they're very hardy plants, same as your cabbages. And also cauliflowers. You could try growing some little cauliflowers in containers or in ground in your greenhouse if you want to do that. You don't have to put everything in a container. I just want to put them in containers this year so they're not susceptible to all that slug and snail damage, which is really annoying. So I'll be using this with benches so I can keep everything raised up. But cauliflowers are another one you could do, along with Brussels. And I've got a variety that I'm going to be sowing at some point today, and they're called early half tall. So that particular variety doesn't grow as tall as a normal Brussels plant. So again, I would think it's one that's really good to put in a container. So we'll be doing some seeds for that, and we'll see if we can get something like that going. And I've also got seeds for another variety called broccoletta, which doesn't grow big broccoli heads. It grows really small ones that come out the sides and the main stem, and they have one leaf either side of that little floret, and the leaves are also edible. So That's another one that I might be trying in a container. We did try some outside in oak tunnels this year. Unfortunately, they got battered by slugs and snails. We never actually saw anything from them. And then when we had that really extreme weather, which I believe was in June, they bolted anyway. So we didn't get anything. And all these plants that we were thinking about growing in containers are all your cold hardy stuff. And because the temperatures are going to be dropping, it's going to be perfect to just put them in an environment where the temperature is a few degrees warmer than out there, but not too warm to cause your plants to bolt. So we'll try some more of those broccoletta and maybe some small broccoli plants as well. But apart from that, things like pak choi or wongbok are really good ones to be growing as it starts to cool down, because that's another one that, for one thing, gets absolutely destroyed by slugs and snails. At the very beginning of this year, I filled that greenhouse, well, we've now got those peppers with loads of pak choi, and there was really good healthy plants, and within a month they got completely wiped out because slugs love them. So again, a reason to put them in a container and raise them off the ground. But also, Chinese cabbage is very prone to bolting when it gets warm. So even though we had some in containers and we put them outside, they also bolted. During that hotter than normal month that we had, it put pay to quite a few of his plants because of that, and another one being spinach. We're now growing perpetual spinach. We can get bigger leaves off that and it'll stand quite a bit longer. But we also have another one called Bloomdale, which I'll also be trying, because that is again an hardy spinach, but it's not so prone to bolting. But along with everything else, we're going to be growing it in a greenhouse in cooler temperatures. Today the weather's shifted once again. We've got full sun and we're approaching 70 this afternoon, so obviously in the greenhouse it's quite a bit warmer. But that's not a problem to just take things out during the hottest part of the day and pop them on a bench just outside and then bring them back in at night time. If it gets too hot where you are. We've not seen much of that this year at all, apart from that 1 month. So there's a few things you can actually be growing in your greenhouse through winter. But you can also carry on doing your salads. We're doing lamb's lettuce, but you can still do leaf lettuce if you want, because you're offering it a little bit of protection. But all your salad leaves are very cold tolerant, so they should grow without too much of a problem. But lamb's lettuce is apparently one of the hardiest winter salads that you can get, because it's a thicker leaf variety than your regular leaf lettuce. We're not going to be growing any arting lettuces or anything like that because they take too long. We can be harvesting a lot more just by doing cut and come again from different containers with different varieties. So we're going to be doing salads still. At the moment we have got those all outside because it's still too warm to have salads in a greenhouse, but it won't be for much longer. And also onions. I've grown onions in ground, and that's pretty much the only thing I like to put in ground during winter, because there's not much that tries to eat your onions. So you could put some onion sets in, and you can get Japanese overwintering onions, so they're really hardy and give you an head start on your onions the following year, because they'll be ready to harvest by spring. Just as you're putting in your first regular sets that you do every year. Other than that, we can do salad onions. I've got some growing already outside. They're called Florence Long Red, so they're a tall red onion, and I've got a couple of containers of those going. But apart from that, you could be growing spring onions, because they're very cold tolerant as well. There's quite a few more things than you think that you can start growing now to overwinter, so you've still got something to harvest through colder months of the year. And you're making use of a greenhouse to its full potential by doing that as well. Or cold frames, if you've got small cold frames outside, you could do it in those if you want. Even in a conservatory, if you've got one of those and you're lucky to have it south facing so it gets a lot of sun. That's going to be your main battle when it gets to that time of year. It's not going to be so much the cold, because we're going to be protecting them and we're growing cold hardy plants. It's going to be more of a case of the light levels and how much daylight we actually get, because it does drop quite a lot. So one thing I always do is I'll remove any bubble wrapping from greenhouse. It's okay to have it round sides because that's just offering that little bit of extra protection at ground level and bench level at the same time from frost. But if you've got any covering your roofs up, you're better off taking that away, because when we do get some bright sunny days, that's going to restrict the amount of light that gets to those plants, and you need to be maximising it. And that's why we don't have any bubble wrap on here anymore. This is one of our containers that we've got going at the moment, but we have got a couple. This is the biggest one, and then we've got some smaller ones in little wash bowls, which also grow really well. And these are those Florence red onions, and they're actually doing really well. I'm not sure how hardy they are during winter, but obviously spring onions are quite hardy. They'd be okay outside, but I'm not so sure about these, because it's first year we've grown them, and they do produce really nice, sweet, mild red onions. So we did a really big container of them, and you can see that they're really healthy plants, those. So as it drops colder, I'll move these into this greenhouse as well. Just offer them a little bit more protection, because there's a lot of onions in here. And I will look it up and just see how cold tolerant they are. But as it does start to drop really cold, they might as well be brought in here anyway. We are doing container garden outside, but last year we had problems where the temperatures were dropping down to -6, and that's pretty devastating for most plants. It slows down the growth, and in some cases it can just make the plants go dormant, so they just don't bother growing at all. And rather than let that happen again this year, I'd rather bring them into the greenhouse, because we are going to be benching this greenhouse so we can fill it with as many containers as possible of different types of vegetables. So that can be just one more for collection, but not today because it's far too warm to have it in the greenhouse. I've also got a container in that container garden that's got parsley in that will grow in all year, and we end up with a massive plant. We've now really cut that back, and it's only about that size. But parsley would do a lot better over winter in a greenhouse, and it would survive through winter, ready to grow even bigger come next spring. So along with the other vegetables that we're doing this year, any herbs that we've got, I'll be bringing inside. We are trying to grow some basil at the moment, but we've not had much luck with that this year. And I think it's probably the seeds. But you can grow coriander, you can grow chives, and obviously when it gets to the coldest parts of the year, just cover them with fleece and they'll be perfectly fine. But we don't do a lot of herbs, but it doesn't stop anybody else doing that if it's something you'd like to try. And of course we've just sown the seeds for the kale as well, which I nearly forgot about. Kale is a very cold hardy plant, and we're trying to grow a miniature version of a kale just to keep harvesting leaves from, as we do most other plants through winter. And I have got a couple of different varieties of those. So the one I've just planted is called Scarlet, so it's a purple leaf variety. But I'm pretty sure I've got some other ones somewhere. So that's something else I'll be looking for over the weekend. But you could try some peas, like snow peas or sugar snaps. Again, they are cold hardy plants, but they're not so much frost tolerant. But if you've got them in a greenhouse, you could also try growing some dwarf varieties, put a bit of bubble wrap over them on the coldest nights and see how they get on. Which is something I'll probably try, because I've got quite a lot of those twinkle pea seeds left, which produce little pods. They're not sugar snap varieties or mange too. They're just a regular pod on a dwarf plant that you shell for peas. But I might try a few and see how they get on, because if you don't try, you'll never find out. I tend to have an habit of just not sticking to exactly what it says on the packets, when to sow and when to plant out. When it comes to an environment that I'm creating where I'm offering plants more protection than being outside, I think to some degree that don't really apply. So that's why I'm trying to grow so many things in this greenhouse over winter. This is a container, a salad that we've started, and that's called French leaf mix. So they're all different varieties of salad leaf, and you can see we've got quite a bit of rocket in there, which adds that little bit of extra flavour to your salads. But this is one we've just started, and it's doing really well. We're still keeping it outside though, obviously, until it gets a bit cooler, because all your salads don't do really well in a greenhouse. And then we've also got that one, and that's a patchy red leaf lettuce. We've already had a couple of cuttings off that, as you can see, but it keeps growing back. We'll get probably 2 to 3 cuttings from that, and then it'll be done, and we'll just re-sow another container, because they're not taking up much room in these little caravan wash bowls. And don't forget, if you do use these, make sure you drill holes in bottom. Otherwise, you're going to rot your roots of your plants. Apart from the things that I've already mentioned, you can try parsnips as well. Parsnips, again, are very cold hardy. So you could try some container parsnips or put some in ground in your greenhouse. I've got some seeds spare, and parsnip seeds don't usually last beyond the first year that you bought them. I've tried them before in past and they've always failed. They only seem to have 1 year shelf life on them. So if you've got any parsnip seeds, you might as well try to grow some over winter, because they're not going to be any good to you next year anyway. So you've got nothing to lose really, but everything to gain if they do work. And we'll be also doing a container with some garlic in. But I haven't decided what variety I'm going to grow this year. But basically every variety of garlic is cold hardy, so it won't be a problem. I just have to decide whether I'm going to buy them or just use a store-bought bulb like we've done for the last couple of years, and we've still got cloves of garlic out of it. But I'll cross that bridge at some point over the next couple of weeks and we'll get some garlic planted. We've also got some seeds left for the broad bean plants, and these are dwarf varieties again. So they only grow to about 18-inch tall, and you get a few beans off them. So you could have a few of those in a container growing away and just harvesting a few beans during colder months. Or you could start them off later in the year like a lot of people do, and then overwinter them ready for spring. But you could also do that outside, because broad beans are very tolerant of frost. So you could grow some plants, get them established, and then plant them out during autumn to overwinter. And for the moment, that's pretty much all I can think on. But obviously, if I do think of anything else, I will let you know. So I hope that's answered a few people's questions who did mention that yesterday. Anyway, thank you so much for being part of the channel, and thank you so much to Paul Braithwaite for making that PayPal donation yesterday. Really generous of you and massively appreciated. And also, thank you very much to Serenity for that super thanks payment. And it's so good to know that not only you, but your whole family are all regular viewers of this channel. So thank you very much, Serenity, for your generosity and you and your family's continued support. I'll see you next time. Take care.